What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about the yummy matchup. There's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of dracotail YouTubers and content creators who have already talked about the yummy matchup, but I'd be very grateful if you use, my information that I will give you, instead of theirs. So let's just get straight into it, because I don't want to waste any time. I'm on my list that I posted earlier, dracotail branded. We're going to talk about the yummy matchup. The yummy matchup. There's a lot to talk about here. With it being one of the best decks in the format right now, it's a very popular thing to talk about, the matchup against Yummy. So I'll talk about the few ways, or some of the ways that I stop Yummy, some of the choke points that I interrupt at, like using 5 mana and Pan, or even during their turn and I have all the traps set. So first we'll talk about that. We'll just get my average end board, and we'll talk about where to use the interruptions at. So the average end board that I make is usually 2 traps plus 5 mana in hand and seals and Golemel. This is usually the average end board that I have while playing this deck. Since it's a 2-card combo that I use for this specifically, usually I have 3 other cards in my hand. Let's just assume that for this specific video, that these 3 are monsters, because I'm playing 32 monsters in the deck anyways, or sorry, 34 or something, or no, even went more off. It's more like 20, 30 monsters. It's 30 monsters. So we'll talk about where to hit Yummy, disruption-wise, and we'll talk about their main combo starter, which is their Cup C Yummy. Cup C Yummy, I feel like this card, you definitely don't need to hit this card with a hand trap, because all this does is get their surprise. Surprise is a very powerful card that lets Yummy play through disruptions a lot easier. But in all honesty, they usually have more extenders. So I guess Cup C would be a pretty good place to stop. I don't usually stop at the Cup C though. Once they normal summon the Cup C, they use its effect to search surprise. Usually, I'll wait for them to get a Snatchy and a Field Spell on board. Once they have Snatchy and Field Spell, I can Seals, bounce back. Usually what I do here is I Seals, bounce back the Field Spell, as they can only activate it once per turn. And then either summon an Albaz or a Malulu. Here, since I would have 5 mana in hand, Malulu would be the better, Albaz would be the better summon. Albaz discarding to fuse with the Snatchy. Now there is a small problem here. I guess I'd have to read surprise. Yeah, because there's really no way to dodge the Albaz once it's here, because they don't have another Yummy name on the board. Now if they activate surprise, and they get another Yummy name on the board, or if they have an extender before you're able to activate the Seals for whatever reason, Seals bouncing back the Snatchy is also very good. And then summoning a Malulu from your deck. So what this does is, not only does it give you another disruption, being summoning a Guardian Chimera or something like that, their Snatchy is gone, even if they chain Snatchy because they had an extender to the Seals. Bouncing back the Synchro makes the Synchro miss timing. So what that means is when the Synchro hits the board, it doesn't have enough time to use its effect by the time the Seals already spins it back. So the next thing we're going to talk about is when to use the traps. The sting is very interesting. In this case, I'd much rather set the a horn, but if you can have the sting, in all honesty, the sting is very good if they're starting with a Sky Striker package, because when they Kagari target the when they use Kagari to add back the Hornet drones from their graveyard, you can chain Sting. Unfortunately, this card, it's not very good if they don't already have a monster in grave, but if they start with like one of the Yummies and then activate the Hornet drones, in certain situations, Sting can be very good to banish the Hornet drones so they don't get access to it. But we have to remember, Yummy has the most extension out of all the decks. Going second, going first, it's really good to flame the field spell, the Mignon, because not only does that stop their way to get to game, because they can't hit over your Golemel or a Guardian Chimera very easily. So it's very good to have the Malulu there for the Guardian Chimera and the Golemel to pop. The Golemel pop is very good if you're going to pop. It's honestly not that good, it's just there to insulate the board, but I've seen it come up. I've seen it come up when they summon the Link 2, the Ukano Mitsune. I've seen it come up when they summon the one of their last Snatchies during the end phase. You can then Golemel pop if you want to, if you have the ability to do that still, or to force out a Herald. Being able to do that on your turn as well, activating the 5 mana in hand or the Malulu on your field, and then chaining the Golemel if they don't chain anything to that. You can always target the brain fuzz there. You can always target the Herald. Now, what to go into with 5 mana, if you really don't have a dragon or spellcaster in your hand, you always have the option to go into Mysterion for the mirror match, or sorry, Psychoterion for the mirror match. You can always go into Philia Regis if you have, let's say, a Pan or Urgula in your hand, and fuse the Golemel with it to summon, or sorry, an Arthalion with it to summon a Philia Regis. This card is very strong against Yemi, because this card is able to banish your opponent's Mignon, which they can get back with the Surprise, I believe. I'll have to check that, but it doesn't look like it. So it is very hard for them to get back a banished Mignon. It's not easy. They have to get the other field spell to recycle it, blah, blah, blah. Also going into an Arthalion on your opponent's turn is pretty powerful to knock the cards your opponent already summoned, the Yummy cards, back into their hand, or the Synchros if they don't have any valid targets in the grave. As you can see, it is difficult to play into Yummy. But I think we should talk about the more important part, because you should be winning game 1 against Yummy, because dracotail is gas and they're insane. But let's talk about what happens going second against Yummy. So what I first want to talk about is what should you side. Siding against Yummy, you can either side in your Bestials, your Drolls. Droll is a very powerful card into Yummy Mitsurugi. So if you're playing into Yummy Mitsurugi, a good idea would be side in Droll. Also, siding in your Fenrirs against Yummy is very powerful. Because Fenrir can summon and try to hit into the Herald, possibly banish the Snatchy or one of the Synchros as well in doing so. For siding out, to get the Bestials in, you can always side out the Ghost Spells. Card's not the strongest into Yummy, or also Ghost Ogre is not very strong into Yummy. Another thing you can do is, instead of playing Ghost Ogre in the main, you can play a third Bell and then play Magnamut in the main deck. These Bestial cards, these are very powerful into the Mitsurugi Yummy, which is gaining more popularity very slowly. I've even played a little bit of Mitsu Yummy, and it is very fun. So I wouldn't be surprised if that deck gained a lot more popularity. Being able to banish the Mitsurugi monsters in the grave with the Bestials, or just drolling the Mitsurugi combo and just stopping them from using Mitsu combo, and possibly even bridging into the Yummy combo, because Yummy can't do much into Droll if they're not able to search with the Cupsy, because usually Cupsy is their first search, that you then draw, and then it does nothing because they go full combo anyways. Another good card deciding if you're playing Thrust Package is Dark Ruler No More, and also the other generic Thrust cards. Unfortunately, Dark Ruler No More, good Yummy players, I've seen they just kind of play around it if they know it's coming. But other than that, that is what you should be setting and going second against Yummy. The average Yummy end board usually consists of a Yummy Surprise in the back row, a Lollipo or a Cupsy synchro of some sort, a Snatchy, and a Herald. This is usually the Yummy end board that we need to deal with. How do we play around this end board? A really good way to play around the Herald is normal summoning Malulu, because it does force out the Herald. If you have the option to, normal summoning Malulu and then using its effect to fuse, using it with a hand trap in your hand or something like that. It won't get banished since it was sent to the field. You can then target the Herald will be forced to negate it. If they don't, then their Herald just gets negated forever and they lose out on the Omni Negate, and we get more card advantage. It does use up our normal summon, but if they use the Omni Negate on the fusion effect, it's a little better, it's a little worse if they use it on the effect to fuse rather than the doing that. Another more, I guess, better way to do it is normal summoning Malulu and just attacking into the Herald and then going main phase 2 into the Malulu, because if they activate, unfortunately, if they activate Surprise, summon a Yummy, and then activate Snatchy, it's a little hard to play around that. But we can use that to our advantage. If they, let's say, summon a Cupsy, and on this Cupsy effect, we can chain Malulu. If they still do it in the main phase, we can use that as our advantage. And then summon into maybe a Guardian Chimera, or an Arthalion, or a Golomel, or any of our fusions in the extra deck. So playing around the Herald is pretty easy. You just kind of hit into it. They will be popping our cards a lot and shuffling cards back, which isn't really a problem. Like, the Cookie Disruption isn't a problem. The only disruption I really see a big problem for dracotail is the Herald, because most Yummy players, if they know what they're doing, they're not gonna Herald unless it kills them if they don't, if that makes sense. The Herald isn't going to be activated unless a Malulu targets it, or if you normal summon an Albaz and the Herald is forced to negate it, or something like that. They're just not going to activate it, right? So that's the one main issue I see. Outing the Herald, it's not easy. Obviously, our 3 of Malulu makes it easier, but it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes your hands are going to be absolutely broken, batshit crazy, or your hands are going to suck, right? So that's the problem, is the Herald, really. Going first in the Yummy, hand trap wise, if you have, like, Yummy can easily play around up to 3 hand traps I've seen, and they can still make a pretty strong board. The best cards you can use is Ogre on the Mignon is pretty strong. Ghost Bell on the Surprise if they need that to extend. If they have no extenders, you can also Ghost Bell on the Snatchy is pretty strong, cutting them out of summoning their other Yummies for free. Snatchy can always revive, but you're also just keep on looping and making them use their pieces of, like, their cards and pieces of their combo and disruption of the end board. They're missing out on the Surprise if they use it if you force it out and they use it after you, what's the word? They're losing out on resources, right? So that's another thing. If you let Yummy extend too much, it's not going to be fun, because they're going to go full combo. They're going to play around all your hand traps. If you have a hand like this, I mean, you have the Ghost Bell, you have the 5-minute Fuse, into an Arthalion to bounce back 2. You have the Bell. You draw for turn, and it's a Lucius. Not terrible, in all honesty. Like, as long as they don't have answers to the 5 mana, you shouldn't be... I don't want to say you shouldn't be losing, but you should be in a pretty good position if you have the 5 mana and you resolve the 5 mana. Yami Mitsurugi, on the other hand, is a lot harder to out, especially the end board, seeing as their end board has an Omni Negate, a board wipe, sometimes an IP into an SP. But other than that, the hand traps that Yami play are pretty standard. I mean, if you lose to hand traps against Yami, it is what it is, because if Rogue deck would have had the same hand, you would have lost to that Rogue deck. Hand traps or whatever. I'm mainly talking about the disruptions that happened in the Yummy main deck, like Snatchy and the Synchros and the main monsters. Going second a hand like this is absolutely crazy. Key2 is also a great way. If you already outed the Herald, activating Key2 is a great way to out the rest of their board. Adding a Pan to pop the Snatchy is very good, because even if you go Key2, they chain the Synchro. You add Pan, Fuse, they chain Snatchy, they go into like a Cookie or a Cupsy. You just pop the Cookie. They don't get the flip effect. You get to summon an Arthalion, bounce 2. Key2 is just so unbelievably powerful in this format, being like one of the best board breakers in the format, in my opinion. Since Dracotail inherently board breaks, you don't need to play cards like Droplet anymore. I used to play Droplet to out the Herald, but now that we've kind of evolved and we know how to use the deck more properly now, it's a lot easier to break boards just using your in-engine cards. Other cards in the extra deck I guess you could use to out Yummy. SP on the Mignon, kind of a last resort kind of thing. Mirror Jade banishing one of the Snatchies is pretty good. Sanctifier, summoning an Albaz, maybe a Yummy to your field, like if they activate a card, then you can Sanctifier target that card, if they activate the other cards. Secretarion is a good way to extend against Yummy. Seals bouncing the field spell on activation of it is pretty good. This card is pretty good, letting you draw 2 cards, possibly into more disruptions. Guardian Chimera, you should be making this card every single time. I don't think people understand the potential of Guardian Chimera. It's such a great card. It gives you advantage. It gives you it's a generic fusion. It lets you pop. You could use a dead Gulamel and a Malulu, fuse those 2, get 1 draw, and then pop 2. It recycles your cards kind of like Fenrir does. It recycles it just recycles all of your cards that you use in the hand, so you can draw into more monsters or even more disruptions or more cards to fuse with 5 mana, because you should be summoning this off the Malulu. So like for example, Seals summon Malulu effect, you're able to negate a monster on the field, and you get a Guardian Chimera pop at least 1 and draw at max 2 cards. At minimum, you should be making this card every single game. In my honest opinion, Guardian Chimera is just such a powerful card, and it's a good beater too. Because going for game, it's very easy in Dracotail. You have your Fusions Engraved that can reborn. Guardian Chimera has 3,300, right? Mirror Jade has 3k. It's 3k, 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 3k Secretarion, 3k Albion. If you're going into turn 3, Dracotail should be winning, right? Turn 2 and your opponent outs your board, it is what it is. But turn 3, Dracotail should be clapping up, right? It is so easy to just go into battle phase and hit over all their stuff. Literally just activating Key2 once, fusing, you're able to trigger, right? Trigger. You get to summon one of these. You have potentially a branded fusion in hand, getting your Mirror Jade. You're getting so many 3k beaters, and then you just punch over everything. And it's just so free. And then you're also drawing cards off the traps. In my honest opinion, this deck is the best in the format. I played Yummy for a bit. It really didn't ever amount to what dracotail has gotten me. It's a very fun deck. I think anyone who's thinking about trying the deck should try it. I'll be coming out with an updated list as soon as I find someone who has a third bell. I guess not updated list consisting of, instead of the 2 ogre, I'm probably going to move the magma into the main, add a third bell into the main. And I think that'll just be it. All I wanted to really talk about was how to beat Yummy, how to play around their disruptions, how to beat them going second. I think the next video I'm gonna be talking about why I believe branded dracotail is the best way to play the deck instead of just pure hand trap dracotail, which I'll get more in depth in the next video coming out soon. At the time of recording, we're still doing the Dimensions format. I have locals in a couple days. Possibly being able to record one of the games at locals will be very helpful. So we'll see if anyone's down to do that. So expect that for a Friday video. Thursday, expect why I believe branded dracotail is the best way to play. And then hopefully this video will be uploaded on Wednesday. Well, have a good one, guys, and peace out.